Storming arrow!
What's up everyone, Lazarix here. Today I wanted to do a short video going over my Ranger Lightning Arrow build that I used to progress through Act 1 of the Path of Exile 2 campaign. First I want to start out by looking at some of the gem choices I made. The first active gem that I ended up taking is Lightning Arrow. This is going to be our main skill that we use most often. This converts 40% of physical damage to lightning damage. Now, the main arrow itself cannot chain, however, the beam that comes out of it can chain 2 times. So we're going to be focusing on using that ability and chaining the lightning to do large amounts of lightning damage. Once you have Lightning Arrow and get the opportunity to put a support gem in there, I recommend picking up the Martial Tempo gem. This is going to give 25% more attack speed to your Lightning Arrow gem, allowing you to crank out significantly more lightning arrows. The second active gem that I ended up picking up is Escape Shot. This is a really powerful ability that allows you some more maneuverability to escape and also has 300% more freeze buildup, allowing you to freeze enemies, lock them down, and give you some breathing room to make space and play a little safer. While progressing, I did end up putting the Ice Bite support on Escape Shot. However, I'm almost certain that's a mistake and it's not something that I would recommend. So skip getting the Ice Bite support for now and let's just focus on the other active gems that we got. The third active gem that I ended up taking was Lightning Rod. Lightning Rod and Lightning Arrow are going to be basically your bread and butter combo. Lightning Rod is an ability that throws down a lightning rod. Basically, you fire an arrow, it drops from above, and creates a lightning burst when it lands. Then the arrow remains in the ground, basically like a lightning rod, and any chain lightning that hits that can chain from it and will release a large lightning burst. So, if I show you here, I believe, let's shoot lightning rod near this wall, and if you didn't know, you can actually shoot into terrain, and things will chain off of the terrain. So imagine that this terrain here is an enemy. What will happen once you shoot the enemies with your lightning arrow, it will hit them and chain into that, causing a bigger explosion. When you get the opportunity, the first support gem that I suggest putting on Lightning Rod is going to be Scatter Shot. Let's take a look at what Lightning Rod does without any support gems. You can see that it just throws down 1 rod. But once we add the Scatter Shot support gem, it is going to make the supported skill deal 20% less damage. However, it's going to fire 2 additional projectiles, effectively increasing its damage. So now, instead of 1 lightning rod coming out, we have 3 lightning rods in the ground, and a significantly larger chain explosion of lightning. Now, the next active gem that I ended up putting in was Stormcaller Arrow. This isn't a gem that I actively use very often while progressing through the campaign. It's something that I use on high HP monsters, high defensive monsters, and on bosses. What this gem does, the biggest thing, is it has 800% more chance to shock. Now, shock is an ailment that causes targets to take 20% increased damage, so this is going to be a significant damage boost on, like I said, high defensive monsters, high HP monsters, and on bosses. So what you will do is you'll shoot your Stormcaller Arrow into that to maintain shock debuff on some of the higher HP enemies. One of the supports that I ended up putting on that was Concentrated Effect. Again, that's because I'm not really using Stormcaller Arrow as my AoE clear or anything like that. I just wanted to do as much damage as possible and have a high chance to shock on it. So Concentrated Effect will make it do 40% more area damage, but have a smaller area of effect. The next active gem that I ended up picking up was called Electrocuting Arrow. Electrocution is an ailment that interrupts the target's actions and prevents them performing any action for the next 5 seconds. Now, this is a different ability than the normal stun buildup that happens in the game, so this allows you another form of crowd control. So with the default stun mechanic in the game, on top of the freeze mechanic and the ability to electrocute enemies, we have a lot of crowd control. Now, Electrocuting Arrow, similar to Stormcaller Arrow, is not something that I regularly use while progressing through the campaign. It's another ability that I use for extra crowd control and to make boss fights easier or to help lock down high HP monsters that are taking a longer time to kill. The final active gem that I got, or persistent gem, is the Herald of Thunder. You'll get this gem while progressing through the first act of the campaign. Once you get Herald of Thunder, you put that in, and that will reserve your spirit. Herald of Thunder is an ability that, while active, killing shocked enemies with attack damage will cause subsequent attacks to release lightning bolts, dealing damage all around. This is going to get significantly stronger the higher chance that you have to shock. With that being said, the next support gem that I ended up choosing was the Conduction gem. This makes it so that supported skills have 100% more chance to shock. I took the Conduction support gem and attached it to our Lightning Rod active ability. You may also consider getting a second Conduction support gem if you have the option, and attaching that to your Stormcaller arrow, as we are using this for single target shocks, and that will significantly increase the chance of it to shock. Once you have the Conduction support gem, one of the next support gems that you're going to want to use is going to be Innervate. This will make it so that attacks gain 35% of your damage as lightning damage for 3 seconds on killing a shocked enemy with supported skills. I chose to put this in our Lightning Arrow ability. You can also use the Lightning Infusion ability if you have support gems earlier and are not consistently shocking things. This will make it so supported attacks gain 25% of the damage as extra lightning constantly. However, it will make it so your attacks deal less cold and fire damage. So if you have things on your quiver like added fire damage or other abilities that are causing you to do fire or cold damage, it will make that ability do less damage. However, early on while progressing through the campaign, when I didn't have a high shock chance, I was using Lightning Infusion as my second support on Lightning Arrow. However, once I was consistently shocking enemies and had Conduction attached to Lightning Rod, I replaced Lightning Infusion with the Innervate support gem. I then took Lightning Infusion and put it into Herald of Thunder.
Nature's Fury.
After that, the next support gem that I got was Magnified Effect, which increases the area of effect of a supported skill by 40%, and I also put this into Herald of Thunder. The final gem that I have over here is Ice Bite. I'm not sure that this is a correct decision. This is a gem that I had picked up and ended up putting into our Escape Shot. It does make it so it gains 35% of its damage as cold damage for 3 seconds on freezing an enemy with supported skills. So Escape Shot frequently freezes enemies, and then that's going to make it so the rest of your attacks then gain 35% of the damage as cold damage. Not 100% sure that that's the most efficient use of a support gem, but that is what I ended up doing. It has been working very, very well. All right, now I want to take a look at the passive tree and some of the decisions that we made. Now, I did end up respecking and unspecking out of some things, but I'm going to go over what I think is probably going to be the most efficient and some of the decisions that you are going to want to make while you're leveling up. So the early ones are pretty easy. We're just going to take more projectile damage, more projectile damage, more projectile damage. You're going to get projectile speed, attack speed, and dex here. And then at this point, you have a decision. If you want chance to pierce an enemy and more projectile damage, you can go for this node right here. I didn't really feel like I needed to pierce enemies, but if you're feeling like you're having trouble, getting to... Because the thing is you don't really need to pierce the enemy. If enemies are in front of your chain things, you don't need to pierce them because your lightning arrow is going to hit the enemies that are right here, and it's still going to chain to these lightning rods and kill them. So pierce isn't really something that you need, and I'm actually considering if I should even spec out of these and instead go this way for increased chance to inflict ailments, which will give us a higher chance to inflict shock, and then we'll also just do 33% increased damage with hits against enemies that are shocked or just affected by any ailments. I hadn't done that while leveling. I had ended up putting the points here, and then I went down this direction. But now, with hindsight, with the knowledge that I have from the gameplay and knowing that I really didn't value Pierce that much, I would probably initially, after this node, go down this way, increase your accuracy rating, go here, and go here. It's going to give you some movement speed and some more evasion. And then I would go down this way. I have these strength nodes over here, so I didn't end up needing strength. and I ended up taking dexterity. But if you are at this point and you find yourself unable to equip gear because of a strength requirement or an intelligence requirement, I would definitely recommend that you use these points and invest it into strength or intelligence. Then you go here, do the same thing, strength, intelligence, dexterity, whichever you need to meet gear requirements. After that, we have some really powerful nodes here. These are just, basic projectile damage, 15% increased stun buildup, and then you get 40% increased projectile damage and 40% increased projectile stun buildup. With these, you are doing a lot of projectile damage and you're consistently building up that stun meter on enemies. I'm also going to end up filling out and continue filling these out just for more projectile damage and some increased accuracy rating at close range. And then after that, I would recommend that you go this way and start building your tree down this way. Again, whenever you get to the normal attribute nodes, just whatever attributes you're requiring to meet gear requirements or skill gem requirements, that's how I would invest these. This is definitely not optimal at this point, just something that I needed to do to be able to equip gear. From here, I kept going down, and at this point, I went up here to get 10% increased chance to shock and increased elemental damage, and then we also have lightning penetration, which if you feel like you're coming up against a lot of rare monsters or bosses or things that have lightning resist and you're just having trouble doing damage with that, that's when I'm going to end up putting points into this lightning penetration. If you feel like you want some more movement speed or evasion rating, you can also go into these nodes right here. Those are kind of my plans for the future, but for the early points and the first dozen or so points through Act 1, I would pretty much recommend following this route, going here, going down here, grabbing these nodes, and then getting this really high projectile damage. It'll give you some movement speed, evasion rating, and you'll have really, really high projectile damage and consistent stun buildup. Now, from there, I'm not 100% sure which direction I'm going to go. We have a lot of really tempting options over in this region, but we also have a lot of really tempting options over here. I am going to finish out these nodes, like I said, but I think there's a lot of benefit to possibly going down here. As we see, there's increased lightning damage, and then these nodes seem really interesting. Shocking hits have a 50% chance to also shock enemies in a 1.5 meter radius, and 50% increased electrocute buildup against shocked enemies, 50% increased shock chance against electrocuted enemies. I'm not quite sure I need this because, again, we don't really use the electrocution a ton except on bosses and high defensive rare monsters, but it was something that seemed interesting. You also have some good projectile damage nodes here and increased area of effect nodes, which all of our things are pretty much area of effect. If we go and look, you'll see all of the modifiers: AoE, 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 AoE. So that may be an option that I do, but I'm not 100% sure yet how I'm going to progress the tree as we move through the second act. The other options that I was looking at over here, as I talked about, we have the lightning penetration, which seems very, very strong. There's probably some stuff that we can do later on with the increased damage type for each type of elements, but I haven't looked into that or messed with that too much. There's also some more increased chance to shock and increased LE damage here. But more than likely, I'm going to end up going into the evasion rating, movement speed, and probably going up this way. There's some really interesting nodes here that have attack speed, and then 1% increased attack speed per 15 dexterity. Though, with that being something that scales off of an attribute stat, that's obviously going to be much stronger the later in the game that we get to. So eventually we'll probably go up there. But again, I kind of was unsure on going that direction because it does have a jewel socket, and I haven't found any jewels yet. So eventually I'll probably end up going through here, up this path, getting this jewel socket, and going this way. Another thing that I was considering when we go through this evasion rating and through this jewel socket node, there's some really strong nodes in here. We get increased projectile damage, and then projectiles have 5% chance to chain an additional time from terrain, and 15% chance to chain additional time from terrain. Now, if we go look at our lightning arrow, it actually says cannot chain. But if you go over to the beam part, which is after the arrow itself can't chain, but once that hits, the lightning that comes out from it chains 2 times. And that can have an additional chance to chain off of terrain. And then the other thing is, our lightning rod, all of these chain. So I'm interested in trying that out and seeing how the chain off terrain goes. Like if we're putting, our lightning rod near walls and then shooting into the walls and stuff. Oh, you can see how shooting into the thing chains it off of those. So I was looking at possibly messing around with some of that synergy a little bit more. Another thing I really want to look at building towards is acrobatics for a bit of defense, and possibly getting Heartstopper. Though I'm not 100% sure what direction I'm going to go as we progress these points in Act 2, but when I do have an updated, when I've messed around with it some more and more confident in what we should do, I'll give you guys an updated build guide. But for now, in early Act 1, the first 10 to 15 levels or so, I would spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 points. It'd probably be my first 14 points, and then you could finish out this and start working down towards this way. Next, I just want to take a quick overview of some of the things I did to craft my weapon upgrade. We just used an alchemy. We bought this from the vendor because it had 2 sockets. It was white, and then we used an alchemy on it. And it gave us 2 prefixes. You can see there's a T1 prefix and a T2 prefix. And then 2 suffixes, a T2 suffix and a T1 suffix. So we're going to exalt this and hopefully get either just the added fizz damage or another increased fizz damage roll, because this is actually a hybrid roll. It's increased fizz and increased accuracy. So there should be a slot for just straight increased physical damage. And we got added fire damage, and I'm just going to exalt it again because I've got 4 of them, so why not? And it looks like we got 8 decks on it, right? And then, if we wanted to, we could also put 20% increased fizz damage on it. I feel like this thing's just gonna slap though already. Let's put one of these in there. Yeah, that should be a huge difference. In terms of gear, the most important gear piece is going to be your bow, of course, since we are an attack-based character. And on your bow, you want to focus on getting added fizz damage, which unfortunately this bow does not have. But if you can get increased fizz damage rolls, those are going to be very strong, as that's going to increase all of the damage that gets converted to lightning. And then also increased attack speed is very nice. And then things like life on hit or mana on hit, life on kill, mana on kill, those are also very good as well. And I do recommend finding socketed bows if you can, and putting glyphs in them, like the iron rune, or sorry, not glyphs, runes in them that are going to increase the physical damage. Other than that, our gear's not really anything remarkable. This is some of the stuff that we picked up like going into Act 2, but try to find life on armor pieces where you can, try to find resistances on armor pieces when you can, try to get boots that have movement speed. If you can get life and resistance on those as well, that's fantastic. But movement speed is really going to be one of the most important things you want to find on those. Again, rings are not really amazing. If you can find iron rings, those are going to be one of your best bets over any of the other rings, because it does give you the added fizz damage. For the amulet, they're probably going to be pretty rare. You might find one in Act 1, so just use what you can. It is what it is. Other than that, we did find these gloves that are pretty nice. They have added fizz damage to attacks, they have life, they have increased attack speed. The last thing, don't really care about that at all. It's going to be like a build enabling thing for some other melee type builds, but we did value the added fizz damage, the life, and attack speed, so we're going to continue to use those. In terms of a quiver, this isn't even a great quiver for our build, because this adds fire damage to attacks. But what I would say is, if you can find things that have added physical damage, as we've said with everything else, that's going to be where you get your most bang for your buck and your damage conversion, because this build is basically converting your fizz damage into lightning damage, shocking things, electrocuting them, and blowing them up. So try to focus on added fizz damage, or 2 to 5 fizz damage, or whatever you can on your bow, your quiver, and other pieces like that'll give you fizz damage. Other than that, again, on your armor pieces, try to focus on life and resistances, and on your boots, try to make sure you get movement speed. For anyone that made it this far in the video, I appreciate you watching and hope this was helpful for you. Please consider taking a moment to like and subscribe to the video if you did enjoy it, as I plan to regularly put out new Path of Exile 2 content as I play and learn. If you have any comments or suggestions, please share them down below. Thanks again, and good luck out there.